today I am being joined by a very special guest while recording this video. Say hello to Opal. She's feeling extra clingy today, so I thought I'd just let her join. I mean, she does have her Saturn in Pisces, after all. Say hello to everyone, Opal. So Saturn in Pisces. If you were born with Saturn in Pisces, you were born with literally the weight of the world on your shoulders. But really, what you have on your shoulders is the weight of the world's consciousness. With Saturn in Pisces, you have a deep calling to help others, even if it means sacrificing your own needs. This placement involves you having to take a spiritual path that really lets you dive deep into the different facets of human consciousness. Because the human consciousness can be quite a messy and difficult thing to dive into, this is not a very easy task. When manifested and acted out in its highest energy and potential, those who are able to master the lessons of Saturn in Pisces are the people that bring profound spiritual awareness and cosmic consciousness to the people in this world. But this also means that people with Saturn in Pisces really have to walk a path that is vastly different from many other Saturn placements. And being sure that you're following the right path is essential. I'm born with Saturn in Pisces as well. And when I was younger, I was the responsible child. When everybody else was living this carefree, young, childlike existence, I had to deal with harsher realities around me. This aspect exposes you to human suffering from a very young age. So this is something that you're very conscious and aware of from a very young age. At the same time, when you're a child, your mind is so innocent, so when you see the suffering around you, you can't help but form compassion and a sense of wanting to help and do something. And essentially, this is the nature of a Saturn and Pisces child. They're exposed to a lot of suffering and they're trying to alleviate or help the suffering around them. But the problem is that children don't know how to deal with such serious things, such serious topics and situations. Luckily for Saturn and Pisces natives, they are born with a sense of fortitude. They're strong, they're resilient, they're mature, and they're responsible. And these are skills that they learn from a very young age, which helps them actually survive. For Saturn and Pisces children, the reality of living a life where you can get lost in your childlike fantasies and your dreams is very difficult. These children are consistently trying to just be children, but they're consistently pulled out of the realm of innocence by the more harsh and difficult things that are happening in their life around them. With Saturn and Pisces, you're very aware of why the adults in your life are suffering, and when you get to your teenage years or so, you start looking into ways to solve these problems. But the issue is that it's not really up to you to solve the problems for the people in your life. It's really up to them. So Saturn and Pisces, teenager, young adult, or adolescent, they can often be on a path of self-discovery, of trying to enlighten them spiritually because they want to help the people in their life who they have witnessed the suffering with. But the problem is that at this point, the Saturn and Pisces individual doesn't have the skills or the awareness yet to actually be able to help people. So they try to take on the responsibility of lessening the suffering around them, but they do not really know how yet. And that causes a very big internal clash. Pisces is the opposite sign of Virgo, and one thing that I found myself doing a lot when I was young is trying to plan a lot, trying to be super controlling of how things turned out in my life, because I thought that if I have this sense of direct control over the things that unfold around me, I wouldn't be exposed to these painful or difficult experiences. But then eventually I also had to come to a very difficult realization after a couple of years of trying to approach life with this mentality that things cannot be controlled and there will be suffering and difficult experiences everywhere, no matter how hard you try. I grew up with a mother who had a lot of emotional problems. I also grew up with a stepdad that drank a lot, and I only really saw my father about once a month. My father used to be a well-known politician in our country, and he was very busy dealing with his duties and his work and didn't really have time for his kids. He would make time for us now and then, but we weren't really his main focus. On the other hand, I mainly stayed with my mom and my stepdad, who had their own demons and their own struggles that they exposed me to from a very young age. So while other kids got to enjoy a carefree carefree childhood, I was an anxious old soul. I became a worrywart, and I was fretting endlessly about all sorts of things that could just go wrong in my life. I also didn't really see much of a future for myself based on the circumstances I was in, and I didn't know how to get out of this situation. So it took a lot of conscious work, a lot of effort to shift my mindset into a positive state, and it also took me years. With Saturn in Pisces, your childhood conditioning can be very fear-based. So you get told that abundance is not something you can achieve, and you get told that you need to live a life of suffering and struggling. So often with Saturn in Pisces, there's a lot of hard work and conscious effort that has to be put into shifting your mindsets and really seeing that reality is what you make it. So growing up, I essentially craved escaping this instability and turmoil in my life. But the more I tried to run away or suppress the difficult things I were facing, the more issues would come up in my life. When I was young, there was a thing called trance parties in my town, and a lot of people would go to these parties and basically take a whole bunch of drugs and party the night away. I started going to these parties when I was about 16, and this whole scene actually played a very big part in my life for about 5 years. I also think that because my Saturn is in Pisces, I was more prone and susceptible to being caught up in this sort of lifestyle. The thing about these communities is that they will often use things like spirituality, consciousness, and awareness as a guise. So I eventually learned that any kind of spirituality that is focused around a form of substance abuse is that often when you go down a path of using those things like drugs and substances in order to gain awareness, in order to learn things and clarify your mind, you actually end up confusing yourself even more. So stay away, especially if you have planets in the sign of Pisces or in the 12th house. So growing up with Saturn in Pisces, there was a lot of lack of safety. With my father also being absent, I wasn't exposed to the stability and the guidance needed from a male or father figure in my life. So I essentially figured out how to self-parent myself from a young age. And with this placement, I still kind of feel like I'm the parent in my relationship with my mother. Oddly, in many ways, I feel like I have a lot more awareness about particular things than she does. But now what I want to address is the very important topic of the Saturn return if you have your Saturn in Pisces. So the Saturn return in Pisces brings a heightened awareness to the areas of your life where you've been avoiding hard truths and where you've been having escapist tendencies. With Saturn's transit through Pisces, you're forced to face illusions, addictions, or ways you've been living in denial or fantasy. Any unhealthy coping mechanisms like alcohol, drugs, or disassociating will be magnified to the point where they can no longer be ignored. Saturn demands that you get honest about your mental and emotional patterns and take full responsibility. During your Saturn return in Pisces, boundaries and structure will have to be implemented into your spiritual life, into your creative pursuits, or any areas where you tend to be impressionable or lack discipline. It's also super important to establish clearer limits with people who take advantage of your empathy with this placement. And around your Saturn return is where you really need to start enforcing this, or you can end up going down a very, very difficult path. In order to really grow after a Saturn return in Pisces, all the weak spots of Saturn in Pisces needs to leave your life. That means no people in your life taking advantage of your soft and kind emotions. That means no escaping reality anymore. That means no things like harsh substances, alcohol, or drugs that put you out of reality. That means actually becoming disciplined and focusing your mind on the big goal and dream that you have set for yourself in your mind and following through with it instead of just wishing, and hoping it will happen one day. A Saturn return in Pisces can crush your idealism as it exposes you to really harsher realities you have been avoiding. But this pain has a purpose. It's to rebuild your life from a more structurally sound foundation aligned with your highest values. During a Saturn return in Pisces, there can be intense periods of isolation, sadness, loss, and feeling cut off from your typical sources of inspiration. Have self-compassion as you work through these moods and don't resist what needs to fall away. Look for imbalances between your fantasies and dreams and your actual circumstances. Saturn is urging you to close that gap through practical effort. Take tangible goals and timelines rather than drifting around on a cloud aimlessly. This transit can also dredge up unresolved childhood issues, family trauma, or feelings of not belonging. During your Saturn return in Pisces is when you really need to work on reparenting and healing your inner child. For those going through a Saturn return in Pisces, it is an initiation into the deepest layers of your psyche and soul. This period strips away the illusions and false masks, forcibly guiding you to confront any inner demons, fears, and shadows that you have locked away. With Saturn in Pisces, at some point in your life, you will likely experience some kind of ego death. Now, this could really come on through many different ways. It could come on through unhealthy means like drugs, or it could come from healthy means like expanding your spirituality. Either way, ego deaths are highly likely with people with this placement. At some point, you're going to have to surrender to the forces that are larger than life itself. Life pushes you to a point of profound spiritual rebirth and regrowth. When that happens for everyone is different, and it can often occur when their Saturn placement is very activated by something else transiting the natal charts. This placement requires you to also shed all attachments to the material realm in order to reach a state of true awareness. And that is something that is very, very difficult for a lot of Saturn and Pisces natives, especially if they have a lot of Earth placements in their charts. While brutal in its intensity, the process of spiritual awakening with Saturn and Pisces leaves you with profound realizations about the illusion of separateness and the role of service in this incarnation. At some point in your life, you need to be rebirthed into a much more spiritually anchored way of being in this world. Without actually leading a more spiritually aware existence and integrating these things into your life will actually be much more difficult with this placement. All the keys and the skills and the knowledge that spirituality can teach you can really elevate you and make you excel, particularly if you have Saturn in Pisces. One of the most important mental pivots with this placement is developing the ability to hold grand idealistic visions while also being fully grounded in the present moment's humble realities. Saturn in Pisces can torment you with utopian fantasies and dreams that never quite manifest because you're unwilling to start with the simple, mundane step that's right in front of you. Get comfortable with the dreaming room existing separately from your daily life's demands and duties. With this placement, there can be a tendency to cast yourself as either the long-suffering victim crushed under incredible burdens and responsibilities, or the self-sacrificing savior or martyr that's busy rescuing everyone else. Neither narrative is healthy or empowering. Instead, cultivate the self-perception that you are simply a humble student and a servant of the great mysteries, faithfully showing up, doing your part while allowing life to unfold in divine order. Embrace the mindset that your sensitivity, empathetic attunement, and mystical leanings aren't flaws to be transcended, but precious gifts. Your ability to merge with consciousness itself and feel into the interpenetrating unity of all life is a spiritual superpower. With Saturn in Pisces, have gratitude for being entrusted with such profound sight from the source. Learn to develop an open-handed relationship to your vision and your goals. Don't grip them so tightly that you turn your beautiful dreams into egotistical attachments. Hold the perspective that whatever is meant for your soul's journey will continuously be shaped and reshaped by forces beyond your control. Find peace in allowing, trusting, and letting go over and over if you have Saturn in Pisces. With this planet sign combination, there's also a strong urge to play the perpetual rescuer or to place your self-worth in noble self-sacrifice. While this is beautiful and compassionate, it becomes toxic when taken to the extremes. With Saturn in Pisces, you really need to learn that you alone cannot take on the burdens of the consciousness and the awareness of humanity. You need to be incredibly discerning about what's truly yours to carry versus what you're trying to absolve and do for others. The issue with this placement is that you take the responsibility for other people's awareness, whereas that is a responsibility they need to put into their own hands. So regularly check in on your energetic boundaries. Are you protecting your inner realm, or are you hemorrhaging vital life force into endlessly witnessing or sailing other people's emotional storms? Know when to lovingly detach. Know when to retreat into your own peaceful inner sanctum, and know when to realign with your soul's dreams. Unapologetically embrace all parts of your human experience, the delicate fragility, the raw sensitivity, the moments of escapism, and the resilient times of strength that you're continuously forging. Every shadow that you illuminate and integrate brings you so much closer to living as a fully embodied, awakened, and conscious being. At the end of the day, having Saturn in Pisces is one of the most mentally, spiritually, and psychologically draining and demanding aspects that a person could be born into. You need to learn how to master the practicalities of this earthly realm while being born into a state of hyper-awareness and cosmic consciousness. With this aspect, nothing is off the table for you to confront. You have to work through deep-seated fears, traumas, childhood issues. You'll question the very fabric of reality and your place in it. Saturn in Pisces is a process of brutally stripping away every little sense of safety that you formed for yourself and clung onto. There may be agonizing periods of existential sadness, emptiness, confusion, and feeling hopelessly adrift with no firm ground to stand on. When the fantasies and dreams that you've poured your heart into don't manifest, it can leave you feeling hopeless, defeated, and overwhelmed by the vastness of what's really being asked of you. Yet, those grueling labor pains are also giving birth to your greatest personal and spiritual growth. With each layer of ego, limitation, and unhealthy attachment you're able to surrender, you'll emerge lighter, wiser, and more attuned to your soul's true path. Little by little, with this placement, you can develop an unshakable faith in the universe's bigger plan for your life. You're being forged into a mystic who can comfortably embrace the incomprehensible mysteries of our existence, while still keeping both feet planted in the ground. You'll learn to blend heightened empathy and a profound regard for the unseen with something that is lasting, stable, practical, and durable. You have the ability to bring any far-out dream or longing that you have into this reality simply by applying a focused effort and commitment. While this aspect is tough as hell sometimes, this position is truly a gift. It's an invitation to integrate every facet of your human and divine nature into a beautifully grounded yet transcended whole. You're meant to be a bridge between worlds, a living embodiment of soul existing in earthly form. So this is my video on Saturn in Pisces. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this video. Do you have Saturn in Pisces, and can you relate to what I've described in this video? What has your experience been like? Please let me know. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already, and check the links in the description to this video to see my socials and my website, to connect with me and to see what I'm up to. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.